poor husband. Suddenly your husband is diagnosed and you think, goodness, that was quite difficult. I almost said something, but I felt that it wasn't the time to say. I was just longing to let it out, but obviously I couldn't. Look at my husband.
Exactly.
Nothing stopped him. He just said, this is my way, I'm going to cope with it.
The most emotional interview ever given by a reigning English queen. But Queen Camilla's decision to open up about King Charles's terminal cancer diagnosis is also historically significant. So let's look at Queen Camilla's emotional words, and then we'll analyse what this really means. She started this interview to mark her work, the 30th year actually of her work with Maggie's cancer centres with Dame Laura Lee, by admitting how much more personal this work came for her after Charles's diagnosis.
People that come in because of the king being so open about his diagnosis and having a productive life.
Look at my husband.
Exactly.
Nothing stopped him. He just said, this is my way, I'm going to cope with it. It made me realise even more how important these places were. It had never really come back to roost at home, and suddenly your husband is diagnosed and you think, goodness, been talking to all these people, now I'm the one, some relation who's got to help to look after my poor husband and try and understand it all.
The Queen made a visit to Maggie's, knowing about the King's cancer diagnosis, but being unable to talk about it.
I remember coming to see our Maggie's just after the King being diagnosed. Nobody could say anything at the time. That was quite difficult. I almost said something, but I felt that it wasn't the time to say. Looked at everybody who was suffering and all the relations, and I think it made me realise even more how important these places were.
And it was just a week before it became public, and the courage that must have taken for you to make that visit.
I was just longing to let it out, but obviously I couldn't.
The Queen's life had changed, and so she asked deeper questions of the cancer patients.
The more open that you are when you're talking about it, the less scary cancer can become. And so if you just keep the lid on it, it can build up. But on that visit, you did sit with some centre visitors, and again, the empathy and support that you were able to offer whilst
I was almost questioning them. I didn't want to pry too deeply, but normally when I went in, I was just talking to them. But I don't know, I felt it's much more deep.
The number of male users of Maggie's has gone up. We had a 12% increase of men coming in.
If you literally take the cork out of the bottle and talk about it.
And there is no doubt that Queen Camilla cares deeply about this project. You can hear the emotion in her voice.
There was a woman who you met just sort of hovering. You invited her in and you immediately said to her, you'll be looked after here. This is the place that you need to be. And that's been your magic.
What I look back over the 30 years is just how lucky myself and Maggie's have been because of the extraordinary people that have come on board.
We've got 27 centres across the UK. You've set the challenge that we need to be at every city. There's 60 cancer centres, so we've got a bit more to do.
As I said, with you at the helm, thank goodness, you were the one that put it into motion. Extraordinary legacy of Maggie. I mean, wherever she is now, she must be so proud.
And look, this interview was so meaningful on so many levels. I mean, just hearing the emotion in the Queen Camilla's voice like that does show that we are in a new era of royals opening up about their health battles. But of course, there is the historical context too. And regular Outspoken viewers know, and I appreciate that I have taken a lot of flack for that, and I will take this flack, okay? But regular Outspoken viewers know that I did report before anyone else that the King's cancer was terminal. I do believe that reporting on the King's health is in the public interest. I know that it is uncomfortable for a lot of you, and I know not everyone agrees that it is the right thing to do, but this is literally our head of state. This is literally the future of the monarchy, and all of the decisions that have been made about the British monarchy in recent years, the King's ailing health, and I will admit, in recent times, his improving health, which we celebrate, is central to all of that. So the King is terminal, but of course, that doesn't necessarily mean he is not going to be around and fighting fit for a number of years, given the new immunotherapy treatment that is improving the prospects for cancer patients all over the world. Yet in last night's Royalist podcast, Tom Sykes suggests via Robert Jobson, our friend Jobbo, that the King's health is actually worse than is currently being suggested. But first, if you're turning 65 in America, Medicare is about to land in your lap and nobody prepares you for it. You pay in your entire working life, right? And then you're suddenly expected to sort through thousands of plans, an alphabet soup of parts, and a mountain of mail. If you pick wrong, it could cost you for years. This is overwhelming, and it is not your fault. So here is the good news. You don't have to figure it out alone. Chapter is the only Medicare advisor that compares every plan nationwide. You talk to a real licensed advisor, not a chatbot, and they will ask you about your doctors, your prescriptions, and your priorities. Then they'll match you to a plan that actually fits your life. No pressure, no sales pitch, and it costs you nothing. One free call under 20 minutes and you'll walk away with real answers. So call 814-813-4918 and get Medicare right the first time. A real person, a free conversation, and some proper clarity about your Medicare options. That's 814-813-4918. But now, back to the show.
He is really skeptical about Charles's health, basically. Now, he doesn't come fully out and say it, but a couple of times I've spoken to him and he said, Charles is tying up loose ends. And he had this really fascinating exclusive scoop that Charles had a sort of almost, one hesitates to use the word, but almost could be construed as a kind of farewell audience with Michael Fawcett, who you remember was a very, very controversial figure. And Jobson kind of definitely seems to, without quite wanting to say it, put this in the basket of the King's health, that it's like the King's ill, he's got cancer, he doesn't know how long he's got, and that's why all of this is happening on an accelerated time frame. Now, I have to say that that's quite different to what I've been told. I've been told that literally Charles's doctors are cock-a-hoop with how the treatment is going, and are running it up and down the flagpole to other patients coming into the London clinic, which is this incredibly exclusive clinic in Harley Street where he's being treated. But I feel like everybody's grasping for reasons as to why because like we are a million miles now from what people actually want, which is for Harry and Meghan to have their titles removed.
Indeed we are. And Tom Sykes further believes that Camilla's interview, while being emotional and deeply personal, has also exposed a major issue in the way that the British monarchy decided to manage the announcement of the cancer diagnosis. Indeed, he has written this afternoon that it confirms how badly the palace botched going public. And here's his argument. We can now, thanks to Camilla, nail down what happened next. The King was admitted on January the 26th for his routine nothing to worry about procedure and was told he had cancer. He was diagnosed on January the 29th. On January the 31st, his newly informed wife was dispatched to open a cancer centre. On February the 5th, less than a week later, the palace hurriedly released its bombshell announcement that he had cancer, having been bounced into it by himself. Having invited the world to follow his prostate treatment, he faced insatiable interest in his recovery. Keeping the worrying new development private would have required outright lying in response to the simplest question in the world: did everything go all right? The much vaunted new transparency swiftly evaporated. The palace refused to say what kind of cancer the king had, other than it wasn't of the prostate. Secret not-for-publication briefing notes were distributed to the media saying he would withdraw from view for several months and that nobody should photograph the king while he was undergoing treatment. The government's response was no less chaotic. The Prime Minister went on national radio and said it was good the cancer had been caught early, whereupon the palace, which had made such a song and dance of being super open about the benign prostate, declined to confirm even that, and then announced it would be saying nothing further at all. It was back to the old days of we won't be giving a running commentary. The reaction was entirely predictable. The result of making the announcement before the diagnosis was properly digested and making a rather strong case for the late Queen's long-standing preference for keeping her health a closely guarded secret. Sykes goes on, I would argue it was the single greatest strategic disaster of Charles's reign, because it turned him into a lame duck king overnight and fired the starting pistol on what courtiers euphemistically termed the change of reign. Planning and positioning for the reign of King William V began that instant, and it has proved impossible to put the genie back in the bottle since. The moment he said he had cancer, executive power and influence began flowing William's way. Within days, William had appointed a new private secretary, Ian Patrick, an experienced former diplomat, with the clear implication being that the heir would be stepping up to a bigger, more global role. His plans were brutally knocked aside by his own wife's subsequent cancer diagnosis, but he emerged at the end of 2024 with a far higher profile than his father and renewed authority within the palaces. Harry flew over the day after the announcement, much to the disgust of Camilla, who openly told friends she blames the unbelievable stress induced by his memoir for contributing to her husband's illness. William tells friends something similar about Catherine's cancer. I have reported that as well. Harry came partly to remind the public that he was the king's son, and partly because he believed that by showing up he would get an accurate handle on his father's prognosis, so important for his and Meghan's next steps. He was stunned to be told absolutely nothing in a brief 30-minute meeting at Clarence House. Charles and Camilla left for Sandringham by helicopter immediately afterward without inviting him along. A source in the King's office later told me Harry's emotional performance had been unhelpful. He went home to California with no solid knowledge, but convinced his father was likely to die much sooner than anyone had envisaged. To those who insist the king always intended to share his cancer diagnosis and would do nothing differently, I ask then why, 2 years later, did he effectively go on television, this was on Channel 4's Stand Up to Cancer, to tell us that after all, he was fine when he was actually not in remission? Why put the nation through 2 years of uncertainty and doubt? Why unleash that uncertainty and doubt within the institution and among his own staff? The good news, and thank God for it, is that Charles has outlived the first dire predictions that he could be dead within a year or two. He has kept up to punishing diary since returning to public duties in April 2024, prompting Camilla to observe that he won't slow down and won't do what he's told. But the damage of that fortnight in early 2024 has never been undone. The palace can retrofit all the transparency it likes into the story, but authority, once it has flowed to the air, finds it hard to flow back up the hill. To Paula Frolic of Paula Frolic Uncensored now. So Paula, can we start with just the significance of this interview? And we are in game-changing times, Paula Frolic, because this wasn't an interview conducted by the BBC, as you may have previously expected, or ITV. This was an interview produced by Buckingham Palace itself and published, Paula, guess where? Our home, YouTube. Power is changing. And to me, it was still significant, and I still call it an interview, but in some ways you could argue this was Camilla taking hold of the emotional narrative surrounding the king's cancer in her own way, without relying on the royal rota, without relying on a mainstream media figure. So it was quite historic in a whole number of ways.
Oh, yes. Well, I think they've also had to step back from just doing only the BBC, because a lot of people are upset with the BBC, but also it's about getting as many eyeballs as possible. And
I
of
call it the
course-
British bashing corporation, Paula. I'm not a fan.
Yes. But also, when you go to somebody on the royal rota, people now these days have suspicions. They're saying, oh, okay, you're going to your friend and your friend is just going to do this, and you're still hiding something. Whereas going to YouTube, this is about getting as many eyeballs as possible. But Tom does talk a lot about how William has basically gained a lot of power and a lot of respect, and so has Catherine. And of course, Catherine has been talking about her cancer battle. And I think this is a way for the Queen to kind of stake her claim on that as well. The last couple of weeks, we've seen a lot of videos and a lot of Catherine talking to cancer survivors and talking about her journey. So this is really the Queen saying, okay, now I'm going to do that. That worked well for Catherine.
And Paula, there was emotion in her voice. Look, this is not a woman who is used to expressing emotion. Let's just be honest about it. For so long, Camilla has had to bottle her feelings up, always be the woman that was there for other people. And look, I've had issues with Camilla for many, many years. That they are well known. But I was emotional watching this interview. I felt her emotion. I thought this was a good moment for her. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah. I'm not mad at it. I mean, here's the deal, Dan. Camilla is the quintessential stiff upper lip.
Yeah.
She has, and the woman who's got bite marks on her tongue so deep she probably can't taste properly. So she never lets anything slip. And for her to do this, it was just really kind of heart-wrenching, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. The world is changing, and it was. And I think it was still classy. She wasn't there sobbing. Yes. It was classy, but with the royals, we look closely at those words, and there was a lot of meaning. Okay, then I want to come, Paula, to this Tom Sykes argument, which is that actually Camilla's words confirm what a lot of people have said for a long time, that the announcement of the king having cancer was a disaster, was a complete disaster for the king's reign. And really, by the time she was at Maggie's, secretly knowing, oh my God, this diagnosis is not what we expected, it was almost too late. Do you agree with Tom that it was wrong for them to be so transparent in the beginning, almost boxing them in once the news was catastrophic, really, compared to what they had expected?
Yes, of course I do. It's absolutely true. The way they could have done it was before you go in for your prostate exam. And I understand why Charles wanted to tell everyone, right? He wants people to go get checked. He wants to have the stiff upper lip British men go and look at their health and see their doctor. But he should have done it in private and then had the option of saying, well, I had my prostate checked and it's all great. Or, okay, how am I going to release this news of cancer? What is it? And it did send the nation into a bit of a tizzy because, frankly, you and I both know that once he had his prostate checked, there was those days of silence, and we all started hearing that something was wrong and that something was very wrong.
Yeah, I know. Oh, God, it gives me goosebumps thinking of that moment because, of course, then we would go through something very similar just days later with Catherine, the Princess of Wales. There was another sort of repercussion from this interview, Paula, and I'm sure the King and Queen and William will be happy about it, although it's only temporary relief. They managed to push this bombshell announcement by Earl Spencer, Princess Diana's brother, off the British newspaper front pages, apart from the Daily Mail, which actually ran with these revelations rather than Queen Camilla's announcement. The Daily Mail actually broke this story initially, and I believe want this serialization badly. They want the book. They want the Diana book, and they have previously serialized Earl Spencer's book. But look, Paula, there are huge repercussions about what Earl Spencer is doing. Tom Bower has just appeared on GB News and said what we all know, but it's still incredibly interesting in this context. This is not good news for the royal family because Earl Spencer remains furious with King Charles and doesn't like Prince William, yet is in the same camp of Harry and Meghan. Watch this. Fresh Harry and Meghan updates every single day. Yes, the ones the Montecito Mafia and MSM don't want out there. Subscribe to Outspoken for daily royal coverage. It's completely free.
But he's doing it because he just wants to set the record, his record straight. And also, it is a fascinating story. I mean, he's got a very special angle. I mean, he's furious with King Charles, doesn't like William, very pro-Harry, awfully unhappy about the way his sister was treated. And so he's a good writer. So I think it'll be, and of course, furious with the BBC, how they had betrayed his sister to do the Panorama interview. So masses of gripes, masses of scores to be settled, masses of unhappiness to be created.
Oh, Paula. Oh, Paula, what have Charles and William done to deserve this?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you feel, Dan, but I don't look that kindly on Charles Spencer.
I'm no fan.
I think of him as
I am no fan of this man.
Yeah, I feel like he's a bit of a grifter. You know, he just sold off a massive portion of Althorp under the saying, well, you know, people were dumping there. He did get 60 million pounds. He probably needs it for his divorce settlement. And now he's getting more millions for this book. And I'm not sure what else he could say that he hasn't already said. But once again, people are monetizing Princess Diana. And it does make me laugh a little bit. Because remember, he refused to allow Harry and Meghan to look at the archives, rightfully so in my mind, especially with talk of the documentary coming out as they try to monetize Diana. But now he's hypocritically likely going to use them for his book. So, you know, this is a man who people forget that, you know, in her hour of need, he said no to Diana. And under the BS excuse of, when she said, I need a place to go with the boys, I'm separating from Charles, my life is hell, and I would like to come back to Althorp. And he said, no, he said yes at first. And then he said, no, it would be too intrusive. And maybe now with rewritten history, I offered her another place on Althorp, but she said no. I call BS on that.
Yeah, and how are we going to know? How are we going to know?
He has a long history of not being very nice to women.
And the other big issue I have, Paula, and I don't think that this is coincidental, is I think he's done it this year on the 29th to give Harry a free run for the 30th anniversary. And this makes it so much easier for Harry now on a whole load of levels, because it's like, well, okay, yeah, I might have had that deal with Prince William, but Diana's brother has done this. And I think by taking the 29th anniversary, I mean, I'm sure there's a bigger plan here. You know, Earl Spencer will have a paperback version that comes out for the 30th with new information. But do you see what I mean, Paula? In some ways, this makes it much easier for Harry next year now, because it's almost like accepted. Diana's blood relatives now are using anniversaries. It makes William's position more difficult.
Or it's Harry's way of saying, well, this is what my uncle said, and now this is what I'm saying. Yeah. And he can do it several ways. One, he can use it to wedge his way back into his family. My uncle said this, but I'm saying this. Look, Pa, I'm really on your side. It's all just so distasteful and annoying. Let the woman be. I mean, are we going to go through this on the 40th, the 50th? I mean, enough already.
Yeah, well, we are. And that's why I'm so upset for William about this, because he was so determined, Paula, and I remember it very clearly, reporting his views at the time, that the 20th anniversary was going to be the end. Okay, we'll be part of this circus, we'll do the BBC, we'll do ITV, but that is it. Tom Bauer, by the way, also pointing out that this does come at a perilous time for the monarchy.
Yeah, I mean, the monarchy is suffering. I mean, not only Andrew, but also Harry and Meghan. They've caused huge damage to the monarchy. And it is, I mean, the king doesn't have the same appeal as the late Queen did, unfortunately, but although he's done a very good job. But nevertheless, it is a problem, especially amongst young people, because they're a very old monarchy, a very old monarch. The young don't actually form a relationship with the people in their late 70s. But there's no doubt this is going to damage the monarchy even more. Why Charles Spencer has decided now to damage the Windsors is a matter of the whole old story of the enormous fights amongst all the aristocratic families of Britain. There's nothing new in this. There have been hundreds of wars across the centuries between the aristocrats.
Yeah, and he is right, I think, to contextualize it in that way, Paula. But I'm sort of looking at who is loving this, right? And guess who? The Sussex Squad. So one of the biggest members of the Sussex Squad in the UK is this awful hard leftist woman, and she was the woman who attacked Catherine, the Princess of Wales, for her appearance after going through chemotherapy. I mean, she is nasty when it comes to royals, and she loves Meghan. She's one of the only people who insists on calling Meghan Sussex, a woman called Narinder Kaur. And she has totally celebrated this, writing, the brother of the late Princess Diana has written a book about his beloved sister. The closest thing we'll ever have to an autobiography of Diana may well be this book by her brother Charles Spencer. And actually, if there were one person who was qualified and knew the most, it would always be a sibling. They knew you before the world did, and remember the person behind the public version. I can't wait to read. Now, again, prominent member of the Sussex Squad, Paula, celebrating this.
But by the way, that's baloney. I believe the closest thing we'll have to a memoir of Diana was the biographies she worked with Andrew Morton on. So,
Diana, her
yeah.
true story.
Not to mention, this is absolute baloney because she wasn't that close with Charles when they were growing up. Charles Spencer, not King Charles. Yes, of course, they grew up in the same house. But again, they grew up in a house where Charles Spencer was treated much better than Diana and her sisters. And again, they were estranged for many years. And there's a huge age gap. So this is absolute baloney skins. Just,
Of course, all of this comes at a time, Paula. And again, there are a lot of people who don't really like hearing about this, but I just report the truth. I'm going to go there. And there are a lot of other people now reporting the truth about this. Relations between Prince William and the King at a low ebb. This after the revelation that not only did he, extend this olive branch to Prince Harry, but he's also now inviting Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to Balmoral. So I want to get your view on this, and we're going to go in depth, actually, over